So I just thought I'd do an update Sunday, 3rd of March, is it? Uh, so I just wanted to do some comments about these drones of mine. Um, the C-Fly Face Mini, it flies um, really well. It's very stable. It's good at buffeting and the wind and staying in place. But I don't like the display on the phone because it's in the sunlight or in bright light. It's very hard to read. So I often have to get a friend or somebody with me to actually tell me what's on the screen. But I can see the stuff at the bottom of the screen sometimes. But like it depends really on the weather conditions and the lighting and everything. But when you got a white background, like the sky, if it's overcast and that, you just can't read the text at the top. But the in a way, I prefer the GD95, even though it's not as stable as the C-Fly Face Mini, because the GD95 has got an online has got a built-in display on the remote control, which is really cool because it's very bright and I can see it, and it's easy to read. So it's not as stable, and the video quality is shite. But I mean, if you, I'm not one of these people. I'm not the greatest for doing photography or anything, so I'm not really too bothered about it, because sometimes I just want to fly it around the garden a bit at low altitude. And so that's the GD95 is great for that. It's I'm not really keen on acrobatic stuff either, but it's just it mainly gives you practice, you know what I mean. It's stable in respect that it doesn't wander off doing crazy stuff like the 4DRC was doing, right? But my only gripe with it, the GD95, was the fact that the battery on it was very inadequate. I could only fly it for the GD95 can only fly it for like 5 or 6 minutes or something like that, because for some reason the battery was dying on me really quickly. And there's 2 or 3 reasons for that. Either one, it's the cold weather and it doesn't like the cold. That's the most likely possibility. But the other possibility is that the batteries are just substandard, because I actually weighed them. I compared them, the weight of the GD95 battery with the 4DS DRC S3 battery, and that was a substantially better battery. So that's the reason why I recently upgraded. Because I'm not really interested in flying the 4DRC anyway, because it's just too erratic, temperamental. So I actually swapped the guts out and put it in the other way around, and it's exactly, the weight was slightly higher on the 4DRC, so that battery is more suited to give me a more flight time for the GD95. And I haven't even had a chance to test it. Now the weather today is really good. We've only got 7 mile per hour gusts, so I'm thinking about just taking it in the garden a bit and testing it out with this new battery upgrade I did. So hopefully I can get that test it out this morning, because there's nobody around. Sundays are nice because there's no kids going to school. There's most people having a lie-in. Generally it's at this time of year, because we're in March, and as long as it's not a holiday. That's another issue. I was really annoyed with the calendar on my phone, because my phone didn't tell me when the holidays were. It didn't, we used to have a calendar on the wall, I can't remember all the holidays, and Easter and all that stuff wasn't on my calendar app, so you forget, you can't keep track of everything. So I posted a little comment on the Samsung support thing the other day, and I got a response. So I managed to update my calendar now, so it's got all the holidays and bank holidays and everything on there now. So that's brilliant, because I don't really want to be flying on bank holidays because that's when you have an influx of people coming through for the day of holiday making, and I just don't want to be flying up my drone when there's too many people around because it attracts attention. I would say it's unwanted attention because it distracts you from what you're trying to do, and it's usually handy if you've got somebody nearby, like a spotter or somebody who can advise them that I need to focus on what I'm doing. And so yeah, there's all sorts of little issues when flying a drone. Now, the other thing is as well, if there's no flight restriction zone in progress in effect, it's usually a good idea to fly high enough that people down below can't even hear it or see it. But then the other problem is that you can't see it, right? So when you're flying higher up at a higher altitude, it draws less attention to it. But at the same time, you introduce the possibility of being out of line of sight and bumping into or seagull attacking it or something, or there's other issues with that. I prefer to fly at low altitude, and as such, it draws attention. It's just a basic fact that you can't avoid. You can't really avoid it. You see, I'm proficient at flying in the simulator larger aircraft, and the reason for that is the larger the aircraft is when you're flying on a simulator, it has more mass, it moves slower, and it gives your brain a chance to think and work out stuff. I mean, because you can actually move your throttle to the right considerably longer than what you would do with a smaller aircraft. The smaller aircraft responds instantly, and just a little nudge, it moves a lot, whereas a larger aircraft, a little nudge, it just hardly moves at all, basically. So there's a huge difference between flying larger aircraft compared to smaller aircraft. Smaller aircraft tend to be act in a much higher frequency, as in response times. Response times also, the more reactive, I think it's the right word, they're just instantaneous in the reaction to input. Whereas a larger aircraft in the simulator, as I say, you can make an adjustment. You can nudge it several times to get the trim corrected on a larger aircraft in the simulator. So it throws you out because you can't do that in a model aircraft, a small aircraft. You can't give it several nudges to correct the trim. Because one little nudge is enough, and then it usually overcompensates, and then you got to nudge it back a bit, and it's just so hard to keep it stable. That's why I like the fact that these drones have a GPS system, because the GPS does that for you. It basically, a decent GPS system on a model aircraft will basically keep the aircraft in one position until you give it a command to move somewhere, and that's the difference between a model aircraft and something in a simulator. You usually don't fly by GPS in a simulator. What you do in a simulator usually is you fly by ILS, which is an instrument landing system, or you fly by a navigation system, which is flying on a true heading or a particular heading. The drones have that as well. They have the fly by GPS, by coordinates, as in waypoints. But that's not very practical. In a town centre, if you're flying a model aircraft, it's not practical because the waypoint could actually take you and smash you into a building. So unless you're at a high enough altitude, but then you'd be out of line of sight. In a built-up area, be out of line of sight. So that's another problem. So the waypoint system is great if you're out in the countryside, in a field, or somewhere like that. Or if you actually are one of these people that wants to fly over the towns, right all over the town at a height of say 400 feet, then that might be all right. But then you're actually breaking that rule that to do with visual line of sight. So there's so many contradictory rules it's difficult to actually find a middle ground point where you're within the law and you're also flying safely. It is kind of tricky. I need you my Coca-Cola. I went out of the shop this morning, got some stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to have a little rant about this because I was thinking about it the other day, about making some comments about this. So as I say, model flying is certainly not the easiest to master, but when you've got the GPS as basically it's like a co-pilot. Basically, the GPS system is your co-pilot. It's your backup. Basically, it keeps the aircraft. It's supposed to, I should say, keep the aircraft in a stable orientation while you decide what your next maneuver is, whether it's forwards, backwards, or left or right. But if you don't have a GPS system that's stable, and if it doesn't respond properly with GPS, what you can have is a flyaway. They call it a flyaway situation where the drone wants to fly to China or something, and that is very difficult because what happens usually is the drone takes precedent, as in it prioritizes its GPS lock. So you can input commands sometimes and it won't respond. So you could, if it's flying away, for example, you're pulling it back and it'll keep flying away. That's the problem I had with the 4DRC. The 4DRC was just too dangerous to fly because basically what happened on it a few times was it would fly in a particular direction of its own choosing because of an error with the GPS system. And when you were inputting commands to say, stop, come back, it wouldn't respond. And the only thing you could do is land it. You could go up and down, but you couldn't actually, it wouldn't respond to left, right, forwards, backwards commands, which is what really annoyed me to the point where I decided it's not worth flying it anymore. So the 4DRC is just not worth it. In my view, I just had some bad experiences with that and I wasn't prepared to risk it. But at least the GD95 does behave itself. It does seem to get a decent lock. Initially, when I first started to test fly the GD95, I only saw a satellite lock of about 9 satellites, but it is capable of getting much more satellites than that. I saw it, I think it's as high as 18 satellites, which was brilliant because when you got that many satellites, it means it's got more backups, it's got a bigger area of lock for stability than you would have with a few satellites. And if you only got 5 or 6 satellites, you're gambling a bit. You know, you're taking a chance because if any one of them satellites was to go out, such as a blockage in the signal, then it could start to act erratically and do strange things, and you could lose control of the aircraft basically. So whenever you have a GPS system, it's always a godsend, and it really does help when it's reliable, but it's not always reliable because of built up areas and things like that. So yeah, just a few comments about my thoughts on model aircraft. We have come a long way. There was something else I wanted to mention as well. We have come a long way in remote model aircraft flying because a lot of the original council laws, I forget what we call them now, it's just got out of my head, they were to do with not flying combustible, petroleum driven model aircraft in parks and things like that, because I think the reason for that law was mainly because of the fact that it could start fires, but they're a little bit outdated actually, because the obviously the new aircraft, they don't use petroleum based combustible fuels, they use electrical batteries. So there's a difference between model aircraft which uses a battery system versus a petroleum based model aircraft which could in theory actually crash and cause a fire. So there are some bylaws apparently. So these bylaws which talk about not being allowed to fly a model aircraft in a park or in a council area, they were particularly addressing the older style of model aircraft which use combustible petroleum based fuels, which makes a bit of sense, I suppose. But having said that, if you was to crash a modern drone that had a lithium-ion battery in it, there's a danger that that could damage the battery and could also cause a fire. But the bylaws weren't actually addressing battery operated or electrically powered vehicles. They were addressing petroleum based vehicles or aircraft. So anyway, just a few comments about it I thought I'd share. Okay, bye for now.